Think you're not profiting off of poverty in any way? Think the poor contribute nothing to society? That they merely burden it by mooching off the government and taking up space in homeless shelters? Sociologist Herbert J Gans would beg to differ. In his article, The Uses of Poverty, The Poor Pay All, Gans lists 13 ways in which the poor do, in fact, contribute to society invaluably. 13 excuses for only treating the symptoms of poverty and not actually tackling the greater issues that cause it. And 13 ways in which, I'm sorry to say it, but we all are guilty of benefiting off the backs of the poor. I, Laura Youngblood, post regular content here at the Autistic Advocate on all things society, social justice, and history. So consider checking out my channel further once you're done watching this video. Number 1. Poverty makes sure that society's dirty work gets done. No one really wants to be a plumber, a garbage man, work in the mines, clean the streets, gut fish, fish for crabs, repair elevators, work in sewage, deal with dead bodies, clean up bodily fluids, or do other dangerous, disgusting, menial jobs that aren't thought very highly of. But someone has to do them. There are 2 ways to fill such positions. Either those jobs have to offer better benefits and wages than the jobs everyone wants to do, or there have to be enough people who don't have a choice. And you have to keep it that way by paying them low wages. You know that paradox where it seems like you need a higher ed degree to get a decent paying job, but you also have to have a ton of money to go to college and get a degree? That's no accident. If everyone could afford to pursue a college degree to qualify for a glamorous, high-paying job, there would be no one left who's willing, or rather, can't afford to be unwilling to provide those services we so desperately need, but everyone else thinks they're too good to do. By making such low incomes, the poor subsidize a variety of economic activities that benefit the middle and upper classes. For example, domestics subsidize the upper middle and upper classes, making life easier for their employers and freeing affluent women for a variety of professional, cultural, civic, and partying activities. Similarly, because the poor pay a higher proportion of their income in property and sales taxes, they subsidize many state and local government services that benefit more affluent groups. In addition, the poor support innovation in medical practice as patients in teaching and research hospitals and as guinea pigs in medical experiments. Number 3, poverty gives job security to people whose occupations service the poor and/or protect the rest of society from them. Police officers tend to spend more time in low-income neighborhoods, informed by the perception of their inhabitants as being uneducated, animalistic, and depraved. Even though this image is far from accurate, many cops would lose their jobs, or at least get their hours and wages cut significantly, if they were to see this perception as improving in any way. The field of social work also perceives the underclass as being more in need of professional help, which is somewhat accurate due to their being more disproportionately affected by issues like abuse, mental health, and lack of access to basic needs, but the view is still informed by bias. If these issues went away, the need for social work would go away and social workers would lose their jobs. Owners, operators, and other workers at charitable organizations, by their job's very nature, also depend on the existence of poverty and the issues that stem from it to maintain their employment. Number 4. Since poor people can only afford the lowest quality goods on the market, they prolong the economic usefulness of those goods. Groceries nearing their expiration date, the not so gently used clothes at Goodwill, cars that are decades old, and flea market furniture and household items. It takes a lot of time and money to make and sell these things, and they're only profitable for as long as they last. When they don't get bought or used, they go to waste, and that's bad for the economy. That would be happening constantly if everyone just had the money to buy new, better replacements all the time. So people who don't have that money increase the longevity of old, lower quality products, saving our economy as well as space in landfills. Those are just the economic benefits of poverty. Up next are 4 social benefits, or ways that poverty helps with the interaction dynamics within society. Number 5. The poor are often identified and punished as alleged or actual deviants, which helps uphold the legitimacy of conventional norms. Common conventional norms across societies include work ethic, monogamy, prudence, good manners, healthy diet, exercise, and good citizenship. One way societies evoke a sense of commitment to these values is by singling out and stereotyping a group of people as being lazy, promiscuous, irresponsible, rude, junk food eating criminals. In most societies, this group of people is the poor. There's some evidence that the poor are just as moral and as law-abiding as their wealthier counterparts. The difference is that when poor people do commit deviant acts, they're more likely to be caught in the act and punished because they don't have the money it costs to cover your butt or get out of trouble for these things. And being so financially and socially powerless, the poor are helpless to combat these stereotypes and misrepresentations. So there we have it, our perfect role model of the people in society we need to try not to be like. Number 6, conversely, the poor allow others to vicariously participate in acts of deviance they wish were a little more socially acceptable. Let's just admit that we all wish it were a little more socially acceptable to be sexually promiscuous, get free money from the government and not work, be generally lazy, eat junk all the time, do lots of drugs, and get drunk every night. The main reason we avoid doing these things is because it would tarnish our reputations if we were to be caught doing them. But if we think someone else is doing these things, we can do them vicariously through these people. Again, it doesn't matter whether the poor actually do these things more than we do. They don't. As long as it's believed that they do, we can live vicarious lives of debauchery based on common stereotypes. Number 7. Poverty plays a crucial role in the culture when media that's designed by and for the poor becomes popular among the more affluent. For example, I got really into country music in high school. That music was designed by the poor of Appalachia as a way of expressing and coping with the ups and downs of life in rural America. Even though I'm from the suburbs of Ohio, I'm still able to enjoy all that music has to offer. Same goes for the rap and hip-hop genres that were born in the inner city and meant for its inhabitants, which also has a lot of fans from privileged suburbs. Sesame Street was designed to provide a preschool education to inner city children whose parents couldn't afford it, but it has so many benefits for young children that middle and upper class parents show their kids Sesame Street as well. Many novels that have become classics, including Tessa the D'Urbervilles, The Grapes of Wrath, Ethan Frome, and Animal Farm, touch on themes of poverty and the struggles of the working class, and have reached middle and upper class audiences, even if only through high school English classes. In books, movies, and TV shows, some of the most popular archetypes of poor characters are the hipster, the country boy or girl, the ghetto kid, and the hooker with a heart of gold. Number 8. Poverty gives status to those who are not poor. In society, someone has to be the lowest of the low. The poor take on that tremendous burden, even if they don't do so voluntarily, simply as a matter of birth and circumstances. The poor function as a reliable and relatively permanent measuring rod for status comparisons so that everyone knows where they stand. When such a clear distinction is made as to who the underclass is and who these people are who sit at the bottom of the social hierarchy, even the so-called lower middle class has someone they're doing better than. Number 9. Poverty aids in other people's upward mobility. A goodly number of Americans have entered the middle class through the profits earned from the provision of goods and services in the slums, including illegal or non-respectable ones that upper class and upper middle class businessmen shun because of their low prestige. As a result, members of almost every immigrant group have financed their upward mobility by providing slum housing, entertainment, gambling, narcotics, etc., to later arrivals, most recently to blacks and Puerto Ricans. Now for some political or governmental functions of poverty. Number 10. Poverty keeps the aristocracy busy, giving it good reason to continue thriving. The condition of suffering and need of the poor provides opportunities for the more affluent to look and feel like saviors and heroes. The affluent seize these opportunities by founding, volunteering with, and donating to charitable organizations, as well as going on domestic and abroad mission trips. If it weren't for that, the upper classes would have no purpose other than the greedy, fruitless one of continuing to make more and more money. Then we would have to shut it down. Number 11. Because their vulnerability and powerlessness leave them with no other choice, the poor are usually the ones who pay the price of change and growth in society. When I think of this, I think of how the poor are generally the first and most affected by climate change and other environmental disasters that result from modern progress. In the 1800s, the poor did the backbreaking work that developed America's cities. Today, the poor are displaced from their neighborhoods through the process of gentrification. Expressways to enable suburbanites to commute downtown have typically been located in poor neighborhoods, since they're the only group who will allow themselves to be displaced. The poor have paid a large share of the human cost of growth of American power overseas, having provided many of the foot soldiers for Vietnam and other wars. Number 12. Poverty facilitates and stabilizes the American political process. Because the poor vote and participate in politics less than other groups, the political system is often free to ignore them. Moreover, since the poor can rarely support Republicans, they often provide the Democrats with a captive constituency that has no other place to go. As a result, the Democrats can count on their votes and be more responsive to voters, for example, the white working class, who might otherwise switch to the Republicans. Number 13. Benefit number 5 of the poor being stereotyped as deviants also has an important political function. If there are people in a society whose basic needs aren't being met, the government supposedly has to help them, which is a big, expensive, time-consuming responsibility. But some of the pressure to do this is lifted if these people's situation is their own fault because they're supposedly lazy, promiscuous, stupid, and irresponsible. From what we've heard so far, society generally thrives on the exploitation of the poor. That seems pretty horrible until those people are made out to deserve it for being so lazy, promiscuous, stupid, and irresponsible. Neither Herbert Gans nor I is saying that poverty has to exist for all these reasons, or even that it should be this way. If poverty were to be eradicated, there would be other ways to carry out some of the very important functions I mentioned. For example, society's dirty work could be done without poverty, either by automation or, preferably, by having those jobs offer better benefits such as higher wages, more vacation time, and better insurance for employees. Similarly, many of the professionals who flourish because of the poor could be given other roles. Social workers could provide counseling to the affluent, as they prefer to do anyway, and the police could devote themselves to traffic and organized crime. Other roles would have to be found for badly trained or incompetent professionals now relegated to serving the poor, and someone else would have to pay their salaries. But fewer penologists would be employable, and the Pentecostal denomination probably could not survive without the poor, nor would parts of the second and third-hand goods market. And in many cities, used housing that no one else wants would then have to be torn down at public expense. Alternatives for the cultural functions of the poor could be found more easily and cheaply. Indeed, entertainers, hippies, and adolescents are already serving as the deviants needed to uphold traditional morality and as devotees of orgies to staff the fantasies of vicarious participation. The status functions of the poor are another matter. In a hierarchical society, someone must be defined as inferior to everyone else with respect to a variety of attributes, but they don't necessarily have to be poor in the absolute sense. One could conceive of a society in which the lower class, though last in the pecking order, received 75% of the median income rather than 15 to 40%, as is now the case. Needless to say, this would require considerable income distribution. The contribution the poor make to the upward mobility of the groups that provide them with goods and services could also be maintained without the poor having such low incomes. However, if the poor were more affluent, they would have enough access to enough capital to take over the provider role, thus competing with and perhaps rejecting the outsiders. The political functions of the poor would be really hard to replace. With increased affluence, the poor would probably obtain more political power and be more politically active. With higher incomes and more political power, the poor would be likely to resist paying the costs of growth and change. Of course, it is possible to imagine urban renewal and highway projects that properly reimburse the displaced people, but such projects would then become considerably more expensive and many might never be built. This, in turn, would reduce the comfort and convenience of those who now benefit from urban renewal and expressways. Finally, hippies could serve also as deviants to justify the existing political economy, as they already do. Presumably, however, if poverty were eliminated, there would be fewer attacks on that economy in the first place. Did any of what you heard in this video shock you? Get you thinking about things you hadn't before? Tell me in the comments, because the article that inspired this video sure did for me. While you wait for another video on history, sociology, or politics, check out these two videos about the issue of poverty, now with the perspective that it serves important functions in society.